All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome. It is 9 o'clock. It's February 21st. This is our regular meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County. So I'll call to order that. And we have Assemblywoman Jill Tolles with us in the audience this morning. Would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, ma'am? Thank you, Assemblywoman. We appreciate that. It's an honor to have you here with us this morning. So with that, let's just jump right into this. Can I get a roll call, Madam Clerk?
Certainly. Mayor Smith? Here. Oscar Delgado? Here. Von Hartung?
Here.
Neoma Jardin? Here. Bob Lucy?
Here.
Amy Cummings?
Here.
Dale Ferguson?
Here.
Cole Mortensen?
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, Mr. Moreno, let's get right into our special recognitions this morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Michael Moreno, RTC Public Affairs Manager. I'm here to give recognition to our sponsors on your behalf and the RTC for the New Year's Eve Free Safe Ride program. The RTC, through the generous support of our sponsors, Renown Health, Colo 8, Wood Rogers Inc., Club Calneva, REMSA, Maury Distributing, Reno Firefighters Local 731, the RSCBA, Cumulus Media, and Lamar Advertising help people celebrate responsibly on New Year's Eve. This was the 35th year for the program, which provides the community free, reliable, and safe transportation options to make our roads safe on the holiday. Between 6 p.m. and 2 a.m. on New Year's Eve, 9,345 rides were taken. The free Safe Ride program, which is offered for New Year's Eve and St. Patrick's Day, supports the statewide Zero Fatalities initiative, as well as Vision Zero, reinforcing awareness of not being an impaired or distracted driver or pedestrian, as well as encouraging the public to try transit. Our messaging to promote the free service served to heighten awareness of the risks and dangers of being impaired or distracted. Public service announcements on Colo TV, Cumulus radio stations, and Lamar advertising billboards were sponsored by these media outlets to get the word out about the free New Year's Eve service. We also had a strong social media presence with the support of Washoe County, the cities of Reno and Sparks, and our sponsors who promoted the free service on their social media channels. These are our sponsors. And as I call the sponsors' name out, please, representatives, join me up here at the podium. Renown Health, and not all sponsors are here this morning either, so. Lamar Advertising, Matt Strophus. Colo 8 News Now. Is Matt in the house? REMSA, and Monica's here from REMSA. The Reno Tahoe Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority, Esther Isaacs. Club Calneva. Cumulus. Reno Firefighters, Local 731. Wood Rogers Inc., and Maury Distributing. Although all of our sponsors aren't here with us this morning, they all are very appreciative to be able to provide this very beneficial service to our community to keep our roads safe and reduce the number of serious crashes and fatalities on New Year's Eve. Would any of our sponsors like to say a few words?
I will, since you encouraged me.
Helen.
We're very proud at the RSCVA to be able to sponsor this. And on my way over here, I was talking to my mother, 85 years old, and she said, what a great program. I hope people take advantage of it. So I'm glad to hear almost 10,000 people did. So thank you for doing this.
Some of you may ask, how does this compare to last year? We had a slight decrease in ridership, just about around 8%. And that's probably attributed to the weekday celebration of the New Year's Eve holiday, as well as the cold that occurred this year. So, but nonetheless, we're very proud to be able to still provide this program to our community and get so many riders to try transit and celebrate responsibly. With that, would you please join us in the well to take a photo with our Board of Commissioners?
Michael makes it sound so weird. Yes, yes, I think there is. I think there is. Get in here, tall guy. Come here, tall guy. Come on, Mayor. Get in here. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
How you doing, man? Good to see you.
I have to say, on behalf of the commission and myself, this is an amazing program that RTC continues to provide, but it's only through the gracious donations of all the partners and sponsorships that we get from throughout the area. And we want to thank you all deeply because, once again, you are saving lives. It is an important service that we provide and make sure that allows for continued tourism in our area, that quality of life that we strive for here in Northern Nevada. And we want to thank you. So we appreciate all your support.
Mr. Chairman,
Michael.
if I could take a little liberty. So the RSVA, who's been a longtime sponsor of the New Year's Eve Free Safe Ride program, just signed on for St. Patrick's Day. So if anybody else wants to do that, please reach out to me.
There you go. All right. Mr. Moreno, don't go too far. I mean, we have a presentation about the 2020 census, and I think somebody may have an important role in that.
We all have an important role
Oh,
in
perfect.
the census.
I see. What a good lead-in.
The 2020 census is upon us, and on March 12th, all of us will begin receiving postcards to take the census. And I had the privilege of serving as the chair of the 2000 census for the Washoe County Complete Count Committee, and it's my honor to again serve as chair of the 2020 census Washoe County Complete Count Committee. So this morning, we have Laura Thorwarth, who is the Regional Outreach Coordinator for the Nevada Census 2020, who will give us a brief presentation as to why this is so important. At your stations, you do have the copy of the presentation, as well as a copy of the actual 2020 census, which is a sample form. It's not to be used to take the census. So with that, Laura, please join us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Thorwarth. I'm the Regional Coordinator for the Nevada Census 2020. On behalf of Lieutenant Governor Kate Marshall and the state of Nevada, I wanted to thank Michael Moreno for his efforts as the chair of the Washoe County Complete Count Committee. And together, I'm sure we will get a successful 2020 census and get Nevada counted. So I'm here to talk to you about the census. So our goals for today, we're just going to go over the operation in Nevada. The federal versus state operations, the importance of the census and the challenges it faces, and how you can get involved and make sure your community is counted. So a quick thing to note is that the federal census is the same thing that I'm working on. I'm just an additional effort provided by the state to make sure that all of Nevadans are counted. The Federal Bureau is also here on the ground. They're hiring for the door knocking team, the enumerators that we all are so familiar with in the traditional census efforts. The state of Nevada just created additional efforts. And through those additional efforts, we have the Complete Count Committee. So last year in April, Governor Sisolak signed Executive Order 2019-06 establishing the Nevada Census Complete Count Committee. The NVCCC is tasked with developing and recommending a census outreach strategy to facilitate the most complete and accurate census count in the 2020 federal census, ensuring ensuring that all the segments of the Nevada population are not undercounted. So the mission for the Nevada 2020 census is that we ensure all Nevadans get their fair share of federal resources and congressional representation by encouraging the full participation of all Nevadans in the 2020 census. Again, we just want to make sure that everyone residing in the state is able to and encouraged to complete the upcoming census and has the resources available to them to do so. For your reference, we have divided the state into 5 regions, so there are people like me all over the state. Region 1 being, of course, where we are, and with Washoe, Carson City, Story, and Douglas counties. Region 2 consisting of Lyon, Churchill, Pershing, Humboldt, and Mineral. 3 with Elko, White Pine, Eureka, and Lander. 4 with Esmeralda, Nye, and Lincoln. And then Region 5 would be Clark County. And we have 2 people just like me in Clark County because of the size of it, of course. We're everywhere. A lot of people say, oh, are there efforts happening rurally? And absolutely, yes, there are. We're making sure that everyone is reached. So why does the census matter in Nevada? In 2016, Nevada received over $6 billion through 55 federal spending programs, guided by data derived from the 2010 census. That money goes into every program, basically, whether it's Title I schools, SNAP, Medicare, Medicaid, school lunch programs, transportation, housing and development, whatever it might be. That funding is derived based on census data. And an undercount in Nevada can mean losing funding for critical programs in Nevada. Nevada is a really rapidly growing state, so we want to make sure that everyone is counted moving forward for the next 10 years. And the 2020 census affects things like public development, public health, education, political representation, housing, and research. Where new schools are built is decided based on census data. Where shopping centers are built based on census data. It dictates how the next 10 years will be decided and funded. Important things to note about the census is that it is confidential. The Census Bureau is required by law to protect your information. A lot of people have concerns about the safety of it and don't want to be giving out their address and name and location and things like that. It is very, very safe. It is very, very protected. All of your data just goes into a giant pool, basically, so no one can find you based on your census information. The census is fast. It takes about 10 minutes to fill out the form, and it's roughly 10 questions. It's about the same amount of time it takes to drink a cup of coffee in the morning, so it's an easy way to do it. Just do it with your coffee. It's money back to your community. Nevada should receive more than $20,000 over 10 years for every person counted in the 2020 census. That's $20,000 worth of funding for your state that helps pay for education, affordable housing, healthcare, and infrastructure in your community. And if you don't get counted, that $20,000 that you're worth will go to a different state. We don't want it to go to California. We want to keep it here in Nevada. And the census is easy to fill out. This year, it is more accessible than ever. It's available online, over the phone, or on paper mail-in form. You're also able to do it in person if you want to wait until someone shows up at your door. It's also important that we don't give our fair share away. Every Nevada not counted again means we lose our federal funding, and it goes to other states. More things to note that we've always done it this way. The census has been in our Constitution since 1790. It's not a new concept. We've been doing it since the beginning of the country, basically. And it's important for one person, one vote. The census ensures fair and equitable representation through elected officials. Congressional districting is dictated by census data. It's our civic duty. The census is actually mandated by the U.S. Constitution to count everyone living and residing in the United States. And it's our future. The 2020 census will shape Nevada's future for the next 10 years and all the decisions made moving forward. We cannot afford to miss this opportunity to be counted. And Nevada matters. Be counted, help your community. You are important, and being counted means helping maintain and improve roads, education, healthcare, and public safety where you live. Important thing to note as well, some questions from the 2020 census. A lot of people ask, what is it going to ask me? So the census will ask you the number of people living or staying in your home on April 1st. If you're unsure about what to answer or who to put there, think, who is in my house on April 1st? It will ask for your phone number in case there are any questions regarding your census form. They can call you and follow up. It will ask for your name, sex, age, date of birth, and race, and that for every single person in your house. It will ask your race and gender and the relationship to everybody you have in your household. So if you fill it out, you would report everybody in your house and how you are related to them. And as you see, you've got your sample forms right there for you. So Nevada census has some challenges. We're in a particularly interesting time with the political climate. There's a lot of government distrust. People are worried to fill out the census and if their data and information will be safe and protected. We want to make sure they understand that the census is a nonpartisan, non-political issue, and it is not affiliated with any other branch of the government. We also have to battle misinformation. There are campaigns already on the ground throughout the country and the state confusing people and asking for things that aren't on the census. The census will not ask for your social security number. It will not ask for money. It will not ask for your political party. And we want to make sure that everyone understands what questions are on there and which ones are from a fake form. And we also have a lot of hard to count communities in Nevada. About 1 in 3 Nevadans is deemed hard to count, whether it's children under 5, seniors, people who are disabled, people who are experiencing homelessness, and people of color. We want to make sure that we're doing the additional efforts to encourage those people to participate in the census. So, how can you help? Share census facts with your community. Having a simple 5-minute conversation about why the census matters and why it's so important can make a really big difference. A lot of people start off saying, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to give away my information. But after a short conversation, it's really easy to explain the importance of it. You can also meet with the Nevada Census 2020 team. You've done it. I'm here. We've met, and if you want to talk more about it, I'm happy to talk with you about outreach we can do in your community. You can become a census ambassador today. Help spread the word, help communicate with the people that you reach, and spread the message about the census. And you can host a recruiting census taker event in your community. The Federal Bureau is still hiring for census takers in the county, and they're still looking for people to help them knock on doors. So you can apply to be a census taker at the U.S. Census Bureau at census.gov. And you can also apply to work with the Nevada Census 2020 team and work with me at census.nevada.gov. So thank you so much for your time and thank you for listening. Again, my name is Laura Thorworth. I'm the Regional Census Coordinator. And if you have any information or would like to talk a little bit more, now you've got my contact info and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? Commissioner Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Laura, how do you distribute the long form versus the short form? How does that get decided?
That'll be decided by the Federal Census Bureau.
I see.
Yeah.
Is it random?
I'm quite certain they target specific areas and have predictated formulas to
Yeah,
sort
because
of
for the
decide.
last 3 censuses, I've got the long form.
I'm sorry about that. I
3 in
can't
a
speak
row.
for the
I should be
federal
playing the
effort.
lottery.
They just really want to know more about you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Thank you. Thank you,
No
Mr. Chairman.
problem.
All right. Laura, we appreciate you coming out this morning. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And this is very important for all those we hope that you do participate in the 2020 census. It is important not just for the federal government to understand the information, but as Laura pointed out, the federal dollars that come back, and especially for the RTC, and this means a lot for us in transit and different things like that. So thank you, Laura. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Michael, you have anything you want to add?
Just one final note. You're right. We use census data to help us in our transportation planning, and so it's very important for all of us to participate. So thank you for the opportunity to share this information with you today.
Thank you, Michael. Madam Vice Chair has a quick comment.
Thank you very much. Thank you for letting me to jump in here on a totally separate item, but I thought it was important to thank the staff and particularly the transit folks that worked to get the bus service to Cashel Services yesterday. That was a nice touch, and I know that the family appreciated it very much, so thanks for everybody that put that together.
Yeah. Great. All right, everybody. So we are on to our first item on the agenda, which is the approval agenda. We are going to make a quick change this morning. We do have, as we pointed out this morning, and she shared with, helped us with the Pledge of Allegiance, or a salute to their flag, Assemblywoman Jill Tolles. She's here for item 5.1, but we do need to get her on her way. She needs to get back to a number of meetings. So we are going to move that up right after the public comment, so that'll follow item 2. So we'll move 5.1 to 2. And with that, I am looking for an approval of the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We're on to public comment. Madam Clerk, I have just one public comment signed in at this time. Do you have any further at this time? All right. So I'm going to quickly read this in. This was tendered to us by Randy and Cindy Bogan from Sparks. They say, Honorable Commissioners, in 2016, the speed limit was raised on Pyramid Highway between Aaron Drive and Egyptian Drive. Since that time, there have been several deadly crashes, drivers attempting to make left turns in front of traffic, driving at unsafe neighborhood speeds. With the incoming development like Stonebrook, the population will become denser and Pyramid Highway will be even busier. The goal of safety on Pyramid Highway is important to everyone. If NDOT were to lower the speeds back to 45 and install speed display signs, it would send a strong message to slow down. That's everyone's safety is more important. RTC, NDOT, and Washoe County, this is our neighborhood, and we all want to get safely home. Sincerely, Randy and Cindy Bogan. So we'll read that into the record and have that committed for the clerk. All right, seeing no other further public comment, I'll close. Oh, I do have a taker.
Hello,
Good morning.
Ryan McKinney.
Good morning, Ryan.
First, I want to say that please do not take what's said today as attack. It's more a critique to make this RTC system better for everybody. An example, since this is directed more to the new executive director with access, is I ride access at least once out of the 5 days of the week for my job, and sometimes I ride on the Right Star. And the drivers complain because they don't have as much flexibility as they used to. An example of the flexibility is like they have to call in for every little thing now compared to what used to before. I can understand they have to call in for beeping when they have to back up, but an example to make the drivers more happy, flexibility is if they have to, like say, a person wants to get off at a different destination, so waiting until they get off, they have to call in for that. And also, if I say a person's in the, let's say the driver's in the area, and they pick a person up, but they still have to follow the tablet, and sometimes be a lot better, you know, the driver said, wait, I'm already in the area, I can pick this person up, and I still have to follow the tablet, and then the passenger would get kind of complain, or sometimes there have been incidents where the passengers have been hitting the drivers because they don't understand why. No, I saw you pass by, you're in my area, how come you didn't pick me up? You know, like that. And also another thing is that with the fact that 5.1 of microtransit, you're probably running through the access system, is that you guys need to be more open system, like, you know, from the driver to the dispatch to the phones, the schedulers to the phone, to the people taking the phones, have it like that, an open system instead of closed off, because it's closed off. And I noticed because the drivers, you know, the driver and I talk, and I've been doing this for almost 20, 25 years, and they say, you know, we would like it if it's more of an open system between us, communication-wise. So thank you.
Great, Michael. And can I have you sign and fill out a card with the clerk, please? Thank you. All right, seeing no further public comment, I will close public comment, bring it back to the board. We're on to item 2.2. Madam Director.
Thank you. Item 2.2 is to accept the monthly summary report for the Technical, Citizens, Multimodal, and Regional Road Impact Fee Advisory Committees.
All right, those reports are in our book. Any questions by commissioners? Seeing none, looking for a motion? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We are now on to 5.1. And with that, Madam Director, will you take us into this, please?
Thank you. Preventing human trafficking is a critical issue for our country and for the region of northwestern Nevada. And this is a pledge developed by the U.S. Department of Transportation that lets us affirm the RTC's commitment to being part of that regional solution. We are part of the regional task force, and that's why we're particularly happy that Assemblywoman Jill Tolles is here to speak with us, because she initiated a lot of the work that that committee is doing. But trafficking, we know nationwide, happens at bus stops, happens at transit stations. So we want to make sure that our operators on ride and access are trained on what to look for and how to respond, as well as RTC customer service staff and all RTC staff who may interface with the public. So training is one element, and we also want to develop a community outreach campaign through our transit system that lets our customers know what to look for and how they can help and be part of that solution.
Great. Thank you. So with that, Ms. Tolles, I'll invite you up, if we can have you up to have a brief, and while she's making her way up, I know Ms. Tolles or Assemblywoman Tolles has done a tremendous amount of work on this and has been actively involved in human trafficking with the issue, not only in Carson City, but here locally as well. My wife, Megan Lucy, sits on that human trafficking board and represents Washoe County in that aspect. And I want to thank you for all the work. I know a lot of you come together in your time, the very little free time that you have to work on such an important issue. And January was Human Trafficking Month, so it's a little late, but it's still always an important topic to cover. So with that, Ms. Tolles.
Is it on?
You got it now.
Well, thank you so much for the privilege of coming before you. This is my first time at the RTC board meeting, and I so appreciate all of your work and everything you do to keep our communities safe. And I also want to give a special thank you to Michael Moreno for reaching out to me last September to express the board's interest in being able to get involved with this important issue. And as you mentioned, we did form with Mayor Sheevy and myself and Senator Cortez Masto's office a task force in Northern Nevada to address the issues of human trafficking. And we decided to divide that up into three major efforts. The law enforcement side, to make sure that we are going after the right people, the victim services side, to make sure that we're helping victims through the process, and then the community outreach side, which you all are a valuable part of. And you know, I grew up, people may not know this, but I grew up a public transportation kid. I had two working parents who had made a decision to buy a house right next to the bus stop so that I could get safely to and from school. And I'll never forget one of my first ventures at the age of 8 on the public bus was back in the days when you would pull the cord for your bus stop. I don't know if we still do that. And I didn't know that that's what I was supposed to do to get off at the bus stop at my elementary school. And so when I saw the bus just fly right past that bus stop, as you can imagine, at the age of 8, I had quite my first panic attack. Oh no, what did I do wrong? Where do I go? And that bus just kept going along until we got to the community college, which at the age of 8, I was not that advanced to be attending. And thankfully, that bus driver on the break at that community college saw me, noticed that I wasn't where I was supposed to be, and reached out and supported me, asked, where are you from? Where are you going? What do you need? And talked me through my anxiety and talked me through the rest of that bus route to get me back on the circle to where I could get back in touch with my mom and get back at my school and back to safety. And that's what you can do when we talk about trafficking victims, you have people who are in our community daily who are most likely coming in contact with these victims in our community. And by teaching them to see, by teaching them how to support, and by teaching them how to engage with the authorities to get them back into safety, you are an invaluable partner. So I want to thank you personally for your pledge to this initiative. It is a major issue in our area. For the last couple years, Nevada has been #1 in calls to the human trafficking hotline. The average age that a victim is recruited into sex trafficking is the age of 14. And this is very prevalent within our community. It affects individuals of every racial, cultural, socioeconomic background who are targeted as victims. And we in Reno are part of the Bay Area to Sacramento to Reno Highway, where victims are trafficked back and forth, which is what makes you such an incredibly valuable partner. So I want to thank you personally for your pledge and pledge back to you to be a partner in this and support you in every way that you are stepping up and supporting our cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. We really do appreciate it. I want to add one other thing. This is so important to our region. Being that we sit right here on I-80 and we are the major thoroughfare for the U.S., for the northern part of the United States, this does impact every socioeconomic level, whether you're wealthy, indigent, whatever may happen. These individuals are trafficked every day using public transit, a number of different sources. And today's society, because of the internet, because of the access to information, these people are getting there quicker and faster, and they're finding their victims, and they're utilizing our services to get to these people. And so we've got to make this a prevalent thing. And so human trafficking is real. It does happen still. It is very, very much prevalent in our society. So we're happy to participate, at least from my standpoint, happy to participate in this. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. So just so I can better understand what the training will be, you will train all of the drivers? Is that how this works?
I can add a little bit about that. RTC is working with the task force and some other not-for-profit organizations to develop that training. We have one introductory video that we're already starting to roll out, but that is something, and I want to express our appreciation to Keolis and Ride Right. They are both absolutely on board with doing this and are already starting that process.
Do we know how long the process will take?
I've already started to work on that, and we expect it to be about a month to 2 month process to reach all of the operators based on their training schedule.
And will we be posting anything literature-wise in the buses?
We are, in parallel with this effort, we have a contract underway to start to develop those outreach materials. And this is something that the task force is working on. We want to have a unified voice throughout the region so that we don't have different messages that might confuse people. Sure. But we do want to have signage, for instance, in the bathrooms at 4th Street Station and Centennial Plaza. So anyone who goes there and needs help would have that information available. We also want to use our buses and other media options available to us to push out the word on what to look for, how the community can be involved and be a partner, and also what victims can do to reach out and find the resources and support that they need.
And where available at bus stops, I would think?
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Cummings, is this mandatory training?
It is not mandatory.
Why not?
It is something that I think this action commits us to, but at the nationwide level, it's not a requirement from the USDOT. They are looking for best practices nationwide.
Can we make it mandatory training?
I think by doing this, it's something that we are committing to doing, absolutely.
Okay. And I think it should just be mandatory training. I think it's incumbent upon us to be good partners and make sure that everyone is trained properly.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All right. So with that, I do have public comment really quick. Michael, I have to take public comment really quick, and then we'll do a photo. Is that Mr. Ryan McKinney? I do have you signed in for public comment on this item.
No, I was due for the microtransit.
Oh, the microtransit. Sorry. Okay.
My bad.
Okay, that's okay. We'll come back to it. Thank you for clearing that up. So, can I have a motion to accept, looking for a motion to accept the pledge? I have a motion? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now. I know, we should walk down there. Let's go down there.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, everybody, for indulging us this morning. So we are going to move now on to item 3, our consent agenda. So with that, Madam Director, do we have any changes that we need to make to the consent this morning?
No, the consent agenda is in order with our regular department reports and procurements.
All right. Is there any discussion or changes to the consent agenda that anybody would like to pull or discuss at this time? Looking for a motion to accept the consent agenda. I have a motion. Second. I have a motion by Mayor Smith, second by Commissioner Hartung. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We are on to item 4.1. This is our public hearing. So we will open the public hearing. This is Madam Director, please take us into that.
Thank you. This is a public hearing for a proposed service change. We talked about many of these items at our board workshop last month. Some of the items from the workshop are for next fiscal year, so we're not going to look at all of those today. But we have Jim G., who is our Service Planning and Innovation Manager, who's going to walk us through the different elements of the service change.
Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the commission. I'm going to just jump right in if you don't mind.
Please do.
The first major change that we are proposing is a second pilot project for our microtransit service, this service being in the North Valleys area. This service will replace our existing Route 17. We'll have some additional tweaks to our Route 7, which also goes in the area. And the advantage of the FlexRide service as compared to the traditional fixed route is that the FlexRide offers much broader coverage to our passengers. It really flips the model of how they use public transit from having to work around the bus schedule to having the bus work around the person's schedule. Just as a little bit of recap about our microtransit service, our first pilot project started in November of 2019 in the Sparks, Nevada area. It uses smaller vehicles such as the one on display here and also minivans. It is essentially the RTC's version of an Uber pool or an Uber and Lyft type of service. The passenger hails a ride either using a phone app or by calling in or by using a website. The vehicle comes to the curb in front of the passenger's residence or business, picks them up and takes them anywhere within the constrained geographic area. We've been very, very pleased with the ridership that we've seen on the Spark service so far, and that on an average weekday, we get about 150 passengers, average Saturday and Sunday, about 80 passengers, and it replaced a fixed route that was operating at only 50 passengers a day. So we've essentially tripled the ridership in that geographic area, along with broadening the coverage of areas that this service can serve. In the North Valley areas, we're going to serve 3 general areas. First will be Lemon Valley, Golden Valley, and also include the North Valleys High School. Second will be the Raleigh Heights neighborhood, and third will be the Panther Valley area, which includes the Washoe County Sheriff's Office, Bonanza Casino, and so on. We have a lot of significant employment in retail in the area, and we are using the existing Route 7 to also help serve that employment in retail. Folks who wish to connect to the traditional fixed route can do so with the preferred points being either the Bonanza Casino or the Walmart. This is a slightly better map of the North Valleys area showing the flex service. The line in orange is the existing Route 17 that will go away and be replaced essentially by the blue coverage zone. Route 7, which also is in the area, will be changed slightly to travel along Virginia Street to serve the Amazon Rail House and the other employment areas in the area. We're also adding additional service on Route 7 in the morning to handle the work trips from Reno to the Amazon warehouse. The next proposed change are on the Route 25 and 25L. These are both in the Sparks area. On Route 25, which is the line in orange, currently at the end of the route, it circles clockwise from Prater to Howard to Lincoln Way to McCarran. And what we've heard from our operators at Keolis is that right-hand turn from Prater to Howard is very difficult in a 40-foot bus with traffic in the area. And so essentially we are just simply reversing the loop and going counterclockwise around that area. Additionally, we have a proposal to discontinue Route 25L, which is a single trip at 9, or a single trip in the morning to go to Reed High School and a single trip in the afternoon to come from Reed High School. That service was left in when we put in the Sparks Flex service, thinking that those students would prefer the fixed route service. What we found is that the students prefer the flex service. And so there's no loss in access to the school because we do have the flex in place. The flex does cover that existing area, and we essentially have one low ridership trip in the morning and afternoon that we propose to discontinue. Next is a change on Route 9. Route 9 is a crosstown route that connects two high-frequency routes, the Lincoln Line and the Virginia Line, and essentially is our Kitski route. When we changed the route in November, we heard from our passengers, especially along Mill, but also around Renown Hospital, that they lost a single-seat ride to get to the retail opportunities on Kitski. And so what we're proposing to do is add that additional coverage back into the route and circle around Renown Hospital by going on 2nd, Kerman, and Mill. Here is a little map showing the route, and you can see the change at the very northern end of the route. That does add time to the service, so instead of being every 30 minutes, it is now every 35 minutes. But the plus of the change is that while we do lose 3 bus stops, we add about a dozen stops. And with that, we add a significant amount of population and jobs, especially in the Renown Hospital area. The passengers on Mill are very excited about this change because now they'll be able to get to places they want to go on Kitski without having to transfer vehicles. Next is the Rtc Virginia Line, and what we are proposing to do is increase the service on it so that the frequency is every 10 minutes instead of every 12 minutes. In January of 2018, the RTC went to every 12 minutes, primarily because of lack of staffing on the part of our private contractor. But I'm pleased to say that our contractor, Keolis, has really increased the driving levels. We're able to put this service back in to go to every 10 minutes on Monday through Friday. And then our final route change is a service near Worcester High School. Again, this is the end of the route, and currently it goes clockwise around Kitski, Plum, Harvard, and Grove. Last October, there was a very tragic accident in the area, and this past January, just last month, there was a walkout held, and the students who exited the bus on Harvard jaywalked in front of traffic, about 15 students. Evidently, they do this every day. And so what we're proposing to do is essentially flip the orientation of the route so it goes counterclockwise, And what that would do is allow the students to exit on the same side of Harvard as the school. So it should eliminate the jaywalking in the area. Additionally, besides changes to routes, we have an ongoing process of looking at time adjustments. We receive a lot of data at RTC, data in terms of ridership by bus stop, dwell time, on-time performance, and we have a process in place that manages this data and looks for how we can improve the service on an assignment-by-assignment basis. Each time we do change schedules, we use that data to basically make our schedules better, and that way, to our service to the passengers becomes more reliable. So this is simply schedule changes designed to help ensure that our passengers are getting to where they need to be at the time that we expect them to be there. We did take these changes to open houses, both at the 4th Street Station and at Centennial Plaza. The feedback from our passengers was very positive on all of the changes, which is always a good thing. And then finally, just a little coming attractions on what some of the service items that we are working on. We are looking forward to our next set of route changes already, based on the direction that we received in the feedback from the board transit workshop. Some of those changes include the completion of the Virginia Line, which should be done by the end of this year, additional flex ride services in Spanish Springs and also the Somerset area, an extension of Route 5 to Desert Skies Middle School, additional service on Route 18 to address a service gap in the evening. And then, as always, we will have an ongoing process to refine the schedules that we do have to make sure that we put the best service out that we possibly can. Those schedule changes, for the most part, are set for this September. And that concludes my very quick presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, and thank you for your attention.
Great, Jim. Thank you so much. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. Can you put that last slide up again, where it shows the flex ride services going out in Spanish Springs and Somerset? So you said September? Is that what I heard? September?
Yes, we're making sure that we can roll out 2 flex services at the same time, but our goal was to have both of them roll out in September.
In September. For the Somerset Mogul area, I did communicate with a citizen group. It's called Verdi Community Council, and they're a pretty large community group that's been there for quite some time. They expressed an interest in communicating with RTC about where the best location would be. They kind of indicated that maybe downtown Verdi might be a better spot. But if you connect with them, Carly Borchard is kind of the head person. They're a great group that'll tell you where might be best out there.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, I appreciate the coming attractions, but I got to tell you, we've been asking for a route out to Spanish Springs since I was elected, so that's now 7 years. I mean, it's long overdue. And with respect to Route 5 extending up to Sun Valley to Desert Skies, again, I mean, we have the need now. The need is there now.
Yeah.
So I'm a little disappointed that I didn't see it here. I recognize that these modifications take time, but I mean, the need is there now, today. I mean, it's there today because of the food bank at Desert Skies. So I don't know whether there's any way to accelerate the time schedule. With respect to Spanish Springs, I mean, I'm just disappointed. I mean, it's just been long overdue. It's been long overdue. And we've gotten the feedback that there just isn't the ridership. Well, I mean, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't put a bus service out there. People that move out to Spanish Springs have to have cars. It's just it's self-fulfilling. So if there's a way that we can move this time schedule up, I'd like to see that personally. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Commissioner Delgado, Mayor Smith, anything you want to share? All right. Mr. G, thank you. We appreciate you coming down and giving us this presentation this morning. And I do share the same concerns that Commissioner Hartung and Mayor Smith have shared time and time again, and I think I've said it from this dais, not maybe necessarily that specifically Spanish Springs, but transportation is the nexus and the beginning to any kind of development and growth in our community. And we have, in the realm of transit, I think we have failed Spanish Springs and Sparks in that sense, because those are areas now that are just growing without transit being available. You have major commercial centers out there, you have housing, mixed housing from multifamily to entry level to all types of housing. We've built beautiful roads out there, yet we don't have any transit. And that's a little frustrating to me, because we do, as we see our economy change and we see how we, Panasonic is using our Centennial Plaza to move people out to Tri-Center and a number of different things, and we have pickups. We need to get those individuals to start using that transit. I mean, and as we see gaming start to change and we start to make this migration into more advanced manufacturing and welcome some of these new companies, those individuals are finding those housing out in Sparks and Spanish Springs to be very desirable and very economical for them. So it makes sense. And I have to agree with the mayor and commissioner that this is something that's long overdue, that I have literally listened to him say it for 5 years. And not that I don't like listening to him speak, but I think it is something. I think it is time appropriate that we start really approaching somehow transit. And I appreciate we've worked through the micro transit, and I think that's addressing some of the concerns in the greater Sparks area. But as we start talking about Spanish Springs and that growth into that community, we really do need to address those concerns as we move forward. So,
Members of the commission, I understand your frustration from where you're sitting. I've been with the RTC. I just hit my 2-month anniversary a couple days ago, and. One of the reasons I was so excited to come to Reno is because this is a city that's growing. It is a city that is improving and really is a leader in the country in terms of setting the trend. And I'm excited to be a part of that process, because you folks realize that it needs to include public transit and transportation, where many areas of the country simply don't get that message. So I'm excited to be here. I'm going to work as hard as I can to make improvements as best we can, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Great, thanks.
And if I might add, we were very pleased coming out of the transit workshop in January with the direction to include this in the FY21 budget. So that's what we're moving forward with now, and we're trying to move on it as soon as we can. It's not in the current fiscal year's budget, but we are going to make sure that we bring that to you in our draft budget for FY21.
Great. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have a draft of the proposed flex ride areas? Do we have a draft of service areas?
We do.
May I get it for Somerset?
Absolutely.
Somerset, Mogul, Verde? Thank you.
All right. This is a public hearing. We do have, and I think, Mr. McKinney, you would like to speak on this item, and so we'll ask you to come down and share with us. Ryan, and this is the item you wanted to speak on, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Ryan McKinney again. First, I would like to thank Jim. I know he's a new guy, but from what I've heard, I understand where you guys coming from, Commissioner Hunton and Mr. Mayor Smith, because I've been here for 30 years and I've seen it's grown. So it's also the fact that he's trying to probably stretch the dollar as far as he can, and I like the fact that he's trying to get in front with these 2 new flex vans before grants. One of the things I do see, Ron, is that the fact that has the survey come back from the first flex program that you guys started in the Sparks area? Because I work in that Sparks area, Ward of 25 has been converted into flex, and I see also where the access, the bus is going to come from the access, the North Valley's example, to the Somerset, to the Verde House. Where is that going to come? Where is the vehicles going to come from to get these people out there? And also another thing is it's not a complaint, this is more a critique to make the system better. Please don't attack. It is not attack, more critique. Is the fact that you guys, in the future, you have to push out how it works, of how a better way of how it works, of to call in, the internet, social media, all that stuff, because people, like, they ask me, Ryan, like, how does this work? I says, well, I don't know how this works. You know, they not done that good of job of pushing out where the number to call in, like through like the internet, like where to go on the website to log in through the website, like say you can log in through the website, like a Uber and Lyft pool. Also, Route 9, like you got Route 9. I hope you guys like put in a stop by the apartments where the seniors live, because in November, the first Monday in November, the RTC Commission had a bad egg on its face because of the fact they took away that stop from those apartments on that line, on that number 9 line for those apartments, and you guys it looked very bad for the whole city and commission, saying, well, wait a minute, you guys took a stop away from people from these apartments, a lot of senior people that are living there, and also a mix of senior and disabled people that are living there as well, and it looked really bad because it said RTC ignores seniors living in apartments by restructuring a line. It was on the Channel 4 News the first Monday after you started this new service. So I hope part of this new realignment of the 9 line, I hope one of these stops will be put back in, you know, that apartment where a bunch of seniors live, because they walk, you know, stuff like that. And I'm very excited, you know, with the fact that he's trying to, you know, stretch the dollar as much as he can.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. We appreciate it. All right. Seeing no further public comment signed in on this. Oh, I do have another individual. And sir, if I could have you state your name and then sign in with the clerk when after you're completed.
Okay. My name is Kevin Cummings. I'm with Foster Fulfillment. I'm the HR generalist for them. So we hire we have about 200 employees, 2 facilities, 2 routes, Route 7 and Route 17. Our concern is, and I know Mermont is one of the facilities next to us, Uline is coming near us, and our biggest concern is our employees. I know our employees have brought concern to us as well with the whole flex thing. Their concern is they do not know how to use the app or how it's going to go about it. We have a lot of older employees, so with the app, it's hard for them to use even our things that we use for work. We use ADP, and it's even difficult for them to use that. So it's a bit of a concern for them when it comes down to having to use this other app. Our other concern is if they do have to call in, do you guys have the volume to be able to have these people be able to call in, and are you guys gonna be able to answer these calls?
Okay. So what we'll do is Mark Maloney is sitting right here next to you, and so Mark will have, he'll have a conversation with you in the back, and I think he'll be able to clear up some of those.
All right.
All right?
All right,
Thanks so
thank
much
you.
for coming. And if you will, please fill out a card. Denise, thank you. All right, any further public comment on the item? All right, seeing no further public comment, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. At this time, we are looking for a recommendation to approve the May 2020 RTC ride service agreement. I have a motion by Mayor Smith. Second by Madam Vice Chair with some further discussion.
Thank you very much. I think we would be remiss if we didn't at least say that the Flex Ride was really a bold step that this agency and this board took, not knowing if it was going to be successful or how successful. And we understand there was some great feedback today about people using it and those sorts of things. I know we were so successful in it that some of we pumped the brakes a little bit on some of the outreach because we were so successful. We were having triple the ridership. But I just want to thank staff and thank my fellow commissioners for taking that leap into technology and door-to-door service. And we could have just kept doing the same old, and we chose to try something different. And thank you, staff, for helping us to do that. It really makes a big difference, so thank you.
All right. Commissioner Hartson.
One last thing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I agree. If we build it, they will come. And we we may have to be careful about what we wish for because it may be overwhelming. But here's what I will tell you, and that is that if it does become wildly successful, it could help alleviate the additional capacity that's needed in some of these areas for roads. You know, when you're moving more people in a I'll use the term in a mass transit fashion, you can certainly alleviate the needs for more roads. So I look forward to seeing how it's really going to pan out. I hope that we can accommodate some of the issues, just as we have heard this morning. But if we do see that we're getting specific requests in certain, especially industrial areas, I think it's incumbent upon us to go back and revisit a fixed route, because I think that can be a cheaper alternative. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. I have just a brief comment that I'll make as well. As we continue to have these discussions about changing transit, unfortunately, we've been blocked into a very small box of revenue that we get to utilize either for roads or public transit every year, and we have to divide that up very carefully to make sure that we can adequately provide for those citizens that do drive cars and those citizens that utilize our public transit. But as we continue to grow and as we continue to see the evolution of our community, parking is a challenge in downtown Sparks, in downtown Reno. We want to encourage people to use mass transit and utilize bikes and different modes of transportation that wouldn't require large parking lots or structures to be built that take up prime real estate in certain areas. We want to encourage people to use mass transit to, as Commissioner Hartung pointed out, to industrial areas where we can do fixed routes and it can be consistent. I think those are the kind of innovative ideas that we need to look forward to moving forward. But as we look at some of these different areas, going back to the revenue, we as a board, I challenge us to kind of find new ways to garner new revenue and find new ways to pay for this, because we can't keep going back, trading sales tax back and forth and 1/8 sales where it's going to go for public roads or public transit, and we need to figure out maybe different avenues, because it seems like a constant battle and a fight, and that we all need more roads and we all need more transit, but we don't have the dollar to do it. I think that's really where we need to be figuring out legislatively, if we have to go down to the legislature and find new ways to utilize bus stops for advertising, whether we can sell properties and how we utilize those, or rent and do different things. But I think revenue to help subsidize some of these programs is going to be essential as we move forward. So those are challenges that I would challenge this board, because I see 4 very intelligent people up here that have a lot of knowledge about how the stuff works. And we need to make those changes, because we have made those innovative changes to bring these programs forward, and now we got to fund them. So that is the challenge. So with that, I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Madam Director. We are on to this jumps us to item 5.2.
Thank you. Item 5.2 is approval of our Americans with Disability Act, the ADA Transition Plan, which we have updated from the previous plan that we developed in about 2011. We have Dan Dunges, Interim Planning Director, here to present, and we have our Project Manager, Rebecca Capular, and Consultant Project Manager, Molly O'Brien, here as well.
Great.
Good morning, Commissioners. As Amy said, Dan Dunges, Interim Director of Planning, for the record. And I'm here before you today to present on hopefully the approval of our update to the RTC ADA Transition Plan. This is goes without saying the significance and importance of this plan. But the reason for it is pretty straightforward, looking to improve accessibility for all citizens, specifically pertaining to RTC facilities and services. And really what this plan sets out to do is was developed a list of barriers, both physical and programmatic, and also an outline, methodology, and a schedule with cost estimates to remove those barriers. And so this is actually, as I mentioned, an update. We have an existing ADA transition plan that was adopted in 2011. That plan specifically focused on the public rights-of-way on regional roads, which obviously RTC does not own, but we do administer improvements and through the pavement preservation program. So that was important for us to kind of get a handle on, the needs with the sidewalk and connectivity through that effort. At that time, we inventoried about 150 miles of roadway. So this update focuses on RTC facilities, our 6 buildings, and of course all the amenities, parking lots, and associated with that. And also we looked at about 360 of the 1,000 or so transit stops that we do own. And we developed a strategy to kind of program different improvements to address any non-compliance issues. Just as an example of some of the findings through the self-evaluation process for our buildings, you can see there on the screen, there's some striping in our parking lot that was a little faded, that needed maintenance. We had some missing signage. Some other examples include non-compliant restrooms. The image there shows, a clearance issue with the baby changing station there. And so there's, not major things, but little things that needed to be fixed in order for us to be compliant. Kind of the greater focus, I would say, of this program was looking at our bus stops. And you can see there's kind of different examples of how some of our stops are not in compliance, mostly related to the slope of the sidewalk, running slope and cross slope in some instances, the transition from the curb up to the sidewalk or the bus stop, and then just not really having a wide enough bus pad, the minimum required for people to kind of stage there while they're waiting for the bus. And I do want to make the distinction, this is update focused on transit stops that I mentioned there's 360 transit stops. As you're familiar, we're also running a program, what we're calling our Improvement and Connectivity Program, for other bus stops that are known to be out of compliance. This study did not look at those because we do know they aren't compliant, and we're trying to tackle that through that engineering program. And construction for that program is anticipated this spring, and that's going to be a 3-year program, and then we'll kind of reevaluate where we're at with that moving forward. And so the next steps for this plan is seeking approval today. As you know, our budget season's coming up, so we want to program some improvements, recommendations from this plan into that. And of course, we will be tracking and monitoring our plan, how that gets implemented. And the plan also outlines a process for reviewing it every 5 years and kind of doing a reevaluation and updates where needed. So that actually concludes my brief presentation. I did, before we wrap up for questions, just want to acknowledge Rebecca Capular, who is the project manager for RTC and really took the lead on this. And Molly O'Brien is here with Kimley Horn, who is the consultant project manager. And I think they both did a fantastic job. I'm happy for any questions.
Great. Dan, thank you. Ladies, thank you very much for all the work, the time you put into this. Are there any questions? Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. Can you go back a slide?
Sure.
Is this my favorite, not favorite bus stop?
It is.
So this is Charlins and Rob Drive.
Yes.
So explain to me, this will start getting an improvement in April? The program starts in April?
The program that was approved through this board to address some of the stops that weren't identified in this plan is to start in this spring, I believe April. Brian Stewart, engineering director, could probably speak to that a little better than me.
And I can add that the first 11 that are going to be in the first phase of the construction are the ones that did not require right-of-way acquisition. We found that the overwhelming majority do require right-of-way acquisition, so they're on a little bit longer timeline as we work through the easement process.
Okay. Does this one require?
This one requires right-of-way.
Okay. Does this one get a bench?
This moved, right?
At some point?
Yeah.
The benches are not part of, it's really focusing on the concrete work in the phase that's underway now, and then we have an additional funding source for bus stop amenities. So that will come in after the pads are in place, with the amenities as a separate project.
Wouldn't it be more cost-effective to put the bench in while it's under construction?
In this case, we think it's more efficient to have them separately due to the limitations of funding of the different sources.
Okay. Well, we'll have a side conversation about this one in particular, because I see seniors holding bags for long periods of time, so I'd like to talk about that. Okay, thank you.
Brian, do you have anything to add, please?
Brian Stewart, Director of Engineering. Good morning. Thank you. And I am excited to announce that we do, if you go to the item 3.7, it was in the consent. So we're awarding a contract, which will start in March, to work on the first 11 stops. Unfortunately, this one isn't there. This one is complex, as you know, with respect to that. So it is a more robust stop. We are moving it, and the design would be to have some rapid flashing beacons and a better crosswalk and a whole really robust type of stop at this particular location. So it's taken a little bit longer to get all those details and capture that money. The program that through engineering that we're doing is through the street and highway program, and so it is using the fuel tax to move those forward as far as the infrastructure for connecting and doing ADA access on the surface. The amenities, as Commissioner Lucy was talking about, is the complex nature between transit and fuel tax, is that we can't use the fuel tax for those amenities. So that's why it sometimes has to come a little bit later to put those amenities in, and they can be a separate project that comes through the facilities department.
And actually, it's not 3.7. That 3.7 is the pavement preservation. Right?
Okay.
Oh, no, it is. Is that for the?
It's the procurement report, and it just talks about that we open bids, and then
So that is the procurement for the bus stop. Is that I open bid right now?
That is correct.
Okay. And I have to share my concerns the same as the vice chair, is that, you know, she has challenges up and down Charlott's, and I know I've seen them in Route Drive. But you can also go out in Double Diamond in my district, South Meadows, where there's a number of industrial areas where we have Zulily and a number of custom ink, and there's bus stops that are just poles and grass. Now, it's not poles and dirt, but it's poles and grass, and it's not, there's no ADA compliance there, there's no way to stand, there's no true bus stop. And I have to agree with the vice chair that if we're going to do some of these improvements, and I understand funding is a challenge, but to just do a portion of the bus stop and then come back and you're not only, when you're shutting these bus stops to make those improvements, you're taking those bus stops offline. Realistically, if you're putting in concrete work and you're having to move those bus stops to facilitate that work, that, to me, the less time those bus stops are down, remember, these individuals count on that bus route to get to and from work. The more time we take those bus stops offline, the more time these people have to change their lives to adequately get to where they need to go. So I think we need to take that into consideration. I understand the funding portion of it, but there's also a human portion of this that has to be taken into consideration as well. And to not acknowledge that is doing the people a disservice, the people that pay into this and people who use that service. So I understand, I appreciate funding and I appreciate financial challenges, but we have to look at that differently sometimes. So, Mr. Judges, thank you. Appreciate it. Any other comments on this item? Seeing none, looking for a motion to accept. I have a motion and a second. Motion from Madam Vice Chair, second by Commissioner Hartung. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Madam Director, the floor is yours.
Thank you. For the director report today, we have an update on a few meetings coming up. We have kicked off the Regional Transportation Plan for 2050. Our first meeting is going to be next Wednesday. It's focusing on the Sparks Industrial Area. We'll be at Baldini's Sierra Room at 865 Rock Boulevard from 3 to 5 on the 26th. And this is one you may recall from our overview on the RTP. Staff at the jurisdictions identified a few areas where they wanted us to focus with more in-depth forums. Downtown Reno was one, Sparks Industrial was one, and North Valleys was one. So the others will be coming soon. And we have our community-wide visioning workshop on the 27th, so Thursday next week at the Discovery Museum, 490 South Center Street from 5 to 7, and that will be live streamed on Facebook as well. The Eagle Canyon study is kicking off, and we have our first community on March 10th at Lemon Valley Elementary School from 5 to 7, also live streamed on Facebook. And later that week on the 12th, we will be at Spanish Springs High School from 5 to 7, and that will also be live streamed. So we're going to work with both ends of that corridor project. St. Patrick's Day free ride, as we heard already, March 17th from 4 to 2. All RTC transit services will be free, so we encourage people to be safe and take the St. Patrick's Day free safe ride. And our next board meeting on March 20th will be held at the Sure Stay Hotel across from the airport, where we were for our transit workshop. And we're going to be back there, again, focusing on the other portion of our budget for the Complete Streets workshop, focusing on roadway needs. So with that, that concludes my director report, and welcome any other questions that you might have.
Great. Any questions for the director? Commissioner Harton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Amy, you mentioned that you're going to be at Lemon Valley and then at Spanish Springs. So the idea here is to basically create a road that will go all the way from Lemon Valley to essentially La Posada.
That's correct. And the end points on either end are yet to be determined.
Okay.
But that's what we want to get community input from.
What happens when we cross tribal land?
The tribe is actually a big proponent of this project.
Okay.
They have participated and are going to continue to participate. We hope. We have reached out to them. They're on our technical advisory committee, and we anticipate being at their community center to speak to their tribal council upon their request.
Okay. So we don't have a meeting scheduled with the tribal council, with the Reno Sparks Indian Colony?
We don't have anything with the tribal council scheduled at this time, but we have been working very closely with their staff. They've been a big proponent for this, asking for us to continue with the process.
Okay. As you know, I'm very much for widening Eagle Canyon up at minimum to what we would call West Calle de la Plata, but I'm terribly concerned. Putting a regional road in a situation where you have two major schools, two schools that are overcrowded, I might add. And even with the addition of Sky Ranch Middle School, and of course, it's going to take a few years for a new high school to come online, which will be Wild Creek or the new Hug High School. There's still going to be a lot of pressure on that road. And this is another one that I've been trying to get this done before I was elected. So I'm concerned because just of the lack of right-of-way. I'm concerned with respect to, you guys gave me a video of the traffic patterns. All I will say is, my goodness. Spanish Springs High School generates a lot of traffic.
Yes.
And so I'll be interested to see what the recommendations are with respect to getting people in and out of there, as well as trying to move them all the way across the valley so that ultimately it can be, that we can achieve a road that goes out east of town. So I'm not saying that that's a bad idea. What I'm suggesting is that there's some real hurdles and some real challenges here, and I want to put this on the record now.
I 100% agree. I think you've defined the range of challenges extremely well, and that's why we want, one of the first things we do to get out into the community and hear from them on what their concerns are as well, and make sure they know we're listening to them.
Yeah, I wish we would have just at least widened that first portion of the road just to see how the traffic patterns would react to that. And then we can, of course, work with the Washoe County School District to see if there's some other ways of dealing with ingress, egress. Perhaps there are, especially with the high school. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Any more discussion on this? Seeing none. All right. We'll close that. I will go to 6.2, our federal report. Madam Director.
Thank you. The federal report is in your packet. I did want to identify one item that has come out since the federal report was drafted, and that's the notice of funding opportunity for the BUILD grant. And we would like to resubmit our Pyramid Highway widening project for the BUILD grant this year. We submitted last year, had a very positive debrief from the U.S. Department of Transportation. So we feel we have a strong application with a very good cost-benefit ratio and would like to resubmit that. And appreciate NDOT's partnership on that as well.
Fantastic. All right, any questions on the federal report at this time? All right, seeing none. It's always our favorite time of the meeting when we get to have our wonderful discussions with NDOT and Cole. Mr. Mortensen, you are here joining us today in place of Director Swallow.
That is correct. And as always, safety is an emphasis for us, and so we like to start off with our safety slide. This year in the month of January, we had 24 fatalities on our road, which is the same as January of 2019. There were 12 pedestrians fatalities statewide. That's up 8 fatalities from last year. There were 3 pedestrian fatalities in Washoe County, and last year there were 4, so we're doing a little bit better here, but overall we're seeing an upward trend in pedestrian fatalities. So next, what we want to do is provide an update of the Spaghetti Bowl Express, kind of a quick recap on what we've done there. In December, we approved the contract for Ames and Q&D to begin construction on the Spaghetti Bowl Express as a design-build project. We issued the notice to proceed to them in January, and you're probably not seeing a lot of activity out there because we actually have 2 notice to proceeds to make sure that the contractor or the design builder has certain things established before we actually get into the design review and the construction of the project. Some of those things are safety plans and setting up a project office. With these design build projects, it's critical for us to have a co-located office so that we can be responsive to the design builder and make sure that we're getting reviews done in a timely fashion so that we can keep them moving forward and keep the project moving forward. So right now, what you may see is some closures in the evenings for geotechnical investigations. They're going to be out there drilling to find out what the soil types are like out in the area. We're looking at construction starting as early as late spring in 2020, but most likely summer, fall, and then we will be announcing a groundbreaking ceremony in the future for that project. So with that, I'd like to ask Denise Inda to the podium to give a presentation on the advanced signal warning systems.
Good morning. As Cole said, I am Denise Inda. I'm from Traffic Operations at NDOT, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background on advanced signal warning systems. The purpose of the systems is pretty straightforward. It's to alert motorists of a signal ahead using signs or flashers. Most of the time, when a driver can clearly see a signal as they approach an intersection, there isn't any advanced signal warning. They just look at the signal and see what, if it's a arrow, green ball, red, those kinds of things, and act appropriately. When the situation warrants advanced signal warning, there's 3 types of systems. First consists of signage only. It's a static system, and it's the best solution when sight distance is adequate and grades are minimal, but there's still a need to provide a little bit of advanced notice about an upcoming signal. The next the next type is a passive system, which includes signage and a continuous flashing beacon. This solution is appropriate for locations where sight distance is adequate, but the intersection is isolated or unexpected, like maybe the first signal when you're entering into a road or into an urban area. The third type is an active advanced signal warning system, and it's best used where sight distance is limited. Where there's maybe heavy vehicle volumes or where there's a reoccurring adverse weather condition that might require additional sight distance or stopping distance for drivers when they approach that intersection. Both NDOT and local agencies utilize national guidance when constructing, maintaining, and operating our roadways, and that includes signals and signage. It came to our attention that our practices for advanced signal warning systems had not kept up with the current national guidance. And proper use of these systems improves driver safety because it can reduce approaching speeds and reducing crashes at intersections. Improper use can have the opposite effect and result in increased speeds through intersections or in the vicinity of intersections. So that's having consistent and appropriate systems in conjunction with our intersections and the signals promotes consistency with driver expectations and also improves driver compliance with those signals. We wanted to take a comprehensive look at our approach for these kinds of systems, and so in conjunction with the local agencies statewide, we partnered with them and we hired a consultant to support our efforts. We started that effort last spring, and we spent about 6 months meeting with the local agencies, identifying and documenting existing advanced signal warning locations, and then developing guidance for the placement of the signs and systems. We wanted to make sure that the guidance is in alignment with the MUTCD and other national guidelines that we utilize. Once we developed the guidance, we used it as a reference while we conducted field reviews to assess and evaluate each location where we have advanced signal warning installations. We did that statewide, not just in Northern Nevada, and we included the appropriate local agencies, and the process resulted in recommendations for each impacted intersection. In Washoe County, there are 16 locations where we have some sort of advanced warning system in place. The next steps are going to include coordinating with each local agency to really review, fine-tune, and finalize the recommendations that for that agency, for that region, and then develop a plan to implement any of the needed modifications. Some locations may see a switch in the type of advanced warning. Other locations may just need an adjustment of the signs or the flashers to meet the recommended guidelines for advanced notice. And some locations may not see any changes. So we recognize that because drivers are accustomed to the existing configurations, a public outreach and education campaign is critical if we're going to make any changes in any areas. And so we're going to conduct a public education campaign in advance to ensure that drivers are notified, to minimize the impacts of any changes. We'll also be working to make improvements on a corridor or in a specific region so that there's no confusion about, why is this one changing and this one isn't, and sometime later come back and make additional changes. We want to be uniform in our changes. We're just beginning to develop the concepts and the content for that public outreach program, but we have developed a one-page handout that provides an overview of our efforts, and I believe you have a copy of that in your packages today. And then we have also been working with the RTC to provide an article in an upcoming newsletter that provides a little bit of information about the advanced signal warning systems as well. So we're beginning to work through that process, and we'll be doing more, and you'll be hearing about it more in the future.
All right, and that concludes our report for this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mortensen. We appreciate it. Zinda, thank you so much for your obviously, I'm just going to go right to Commissioner Hartung. He's been chomping at the bit.
I'll start with this, Mr. Mortensen. You heard a bit of public comment this morning that was a letter, and that was not encouraged by me at all. In fact, they called me, and I encouraged them to actually come, but she said that she could not because she actually works. Sadly, the speeds through there have done nothing but increased, and where she's talking about is essentially it used to be 45 miles an hour from about Aaron Drive, Cole, maybe Dolores, to the end of the valley just past Sunset Springs / Egyptian. That was a gubernatorial mandate because a young man was killed there many years ago on a bicycle, and he forced the slowing of the traffic down through there, which actually was a good thing. I know you guys did some studies that indicated that the 40th percentile was traveling faster. Well, now the 40th percentile is traveling even faster. And the common speed through there now is 65 to 70. I drive it every day, sometimes multiple times a day, at least twice, once going out, once coming in. And so the safety of that section, I believe, has been compromised. We had a really bad accident a couple of weeks back. I've not heard back what the cause was, but blessedly, I have heard that there was no fatalities. That's a great thing. I don't like fatalities to drive our policy. But that said, I can tell you, it's tough getting out. This morning, coming out of Sky Ranch, the traffic was just flying from Eagle Canyon, heading north and heading south. So I would beg you guys to, let's revisit that. And I'll just end this portion of the comment with this. I was extremely disappointed that NDOT just decided to raise the speed limit through there without consulting Washoe County's engineers. I know it's your right of way, I know it's your road, I get that, but that said, I saw it actually the day that it happened, and because I went through there and I saw that it was 55 miles an hour. I came to work and I went into my engineer's office and I said, you know, what's with this? How can we raise the speed limit through this area? It's difficult for the traffic to cross. And they said, we had nothing to do with this. We didn't even know that this occurred. And they started making some phone calls and found out, of course, I think they called Mike Fease, who is the district engineer. So I recognize the ways to increase volumes through certain areas. I mean, I get that. You can widen, you can increase speeds, you can decrease accesses, but if you're going to increase the speeds and not decrease the accesses, it's a losing combination, in my opinion. So that's just that part for the record. And then I can talk about the advanced warning systems next. Go ahead. Okay. So the advanced warning systems, the residents in District 5 who live out beyond Spanish Springs, the people who live in Warm Springs and off the Winnemucca Ranch and Palomino Valley and those areas coming in have I've been castigated so many times for that signal. I feel like a whipping post. And the experiment is a tough one. While I recognize that you're trying to collect data and trying to understand that, in your presentation, Ms. Inda, you talked about the three types of advanced warning systems, whether it was static, passive, or active, and you talked about distances and et cetera. One thing you didn't talk about was speeds, because heading to the north, you've got 65 miles an hour. And so they're flying into the valley. So the real solution, and I know that people hate, I'll get nasty emails over this, and that's okay. But the real solution out there has been and will continue to be to widen that stretch of road from Egyptian and Sunset Springs to the end of the valley. There's a lot of growth, and there's a lot of things that are happening, and there's a lot of confluence, as it were, a lot of people entering the roadway in various places, and I know it's relatively limited, but there are still some 10-acre lots that are out to the north beyond Calle de la Plata where these people can enter the roadway on their own. It's a dangerous stretch of road and really does need to be widened regardless of the advanced warning systems. Now, that said, it would have been good to just make them all consistent on Pyramid Highway. If you're going to do the study to see what's happening, make all of them flash all the time, or with the expectation from drivers, because I can tell you, I've lived out there for 33 years when Pyramid was 2 lanes and there were no intersections. None. The first intersection from essentially Pyramid Lake to town was McCarran. That was the very first intersection. And so as we put in signals and tried to control the highway, and wisely so, we started doing those advanced warning systems, and it created an expectation by the drivers. And so now we have this one signal that's out north, and not all the people in the valley experience this, but that one signal is very concerning. And then the other thing that they complained about, and this will be my final comment, is just the distance that the advanced warning system was placed from the intersection itself. It seems as if some of the others are much greater. The distances are much greater. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The city of Sparks just read the report, and they're in favor of the things you want to do out there. There's no need to have an ASW when you can see the signal from 100 yards away. So you can, as far as we're concerned, you're on the right track of taking those out. The other thing is, if one of those flashes are broken, we don't know it. We can't tell if they're broken or not, because some of them are flashing all the time, some of them aren't flashing all the time. So there's no way to know how to fix it, and apparently there is no fix because it's not they're not attached to the signal. They run on a separate system, I believe, don't they? Yeah. So we're in favor of what you're doing out there, and we look forward to seeing it work. You're going to start on Pyramid first, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. Could we get the slide of the spaghetti bowl up again? Yeah, no, well, okay. There was a slide you had of the spaghetti bowl?
The picture of the spaghetti.
I think he's trying to do it from over here, and I'm not sure it's working.
I think Denise has to load it.
Okay. But while they're loading, someone mentioned yesterday who lived in the Bay Area that this stretch of road that you're referring to, Commissioner Hartung, reminded them of the Bay Area to Tracy. That was not a compliment at all. The question I have is, and I'm going to go and kind of like some of these improvements that we're now seeing expedited at the Spaghetti Bowl, I like to at least part attribute to my every meeting conversations on the subject. I'm going to now start to have, to see if we can get some clarity and maybe some movement on the every meeting conversation about the Governor's Bowl acquisition for homeless services for both short, medium, and long-term use. I know we've already submitted letters from the Community Homeless Advisory Board and from, was it this board? I think it was this board as well, asking for us to be able to acquire that for those much-needed services. And the feedback we're getting is, yes, in 2036, when the project's done, because you guys might need it for transfer of some housing projects or maybe some staging of equipment. But then I hear no, that there's other, I'd like to have kind of a continual conversation on that, the urgency and the need for this ideal piece of property for services for our most vulnerable is needed now and in the future. So anyway, we can keep that conversation going. And we as a jurisdiction at the City of Reno would like to see if there's alternative opportunities so that we could get this for this purpose.
Understood. I don't know if there was, I'd be more than happy to make sure that we continue that effort and continue to have those meetings and see what we can do to help out. I have Nick Johnson standing up in the back. If you have any other specific questions, he can come down and probably provide you a better answer than I can here from the hip.
We'll follow up at the next meeting. Thank you.
Looks like Nick heard you loud and clear back there. Ms. Cinda, I have one really quick question for you. In your slide, you did point out 2 locations in Washoe County, both of those being at Mount Rose Highway and Thomas Creek Road in both directions. As I see it, at least the westbound direction has the AWS already. Is that correct? It's already in place, correct?
Yes, Chairman Lucy, it is. And
Okay.
what we would just be doing is ensuring that reviewing that location and determining what the most appropriate advanced signal warning might be, and just making any adjustments perhaps to the signing, perhaps to the signal timing, perhaps to the spacing, those kinds of things. But you're correct, they're already there.
So Okay. Which I find slightly confusing because, yes, I know, so you pointed out they're both there, and both not only at Thomas Creek, but the other locations that are vulnerable areas on 431, which is that Mount Rose Highway and Wedge Parkway, which resides in the city of Reno city limits. And those AWSs seem to work very well. Why are we reviewing those? I mean, I understand the Pyramid Way and those challenges because we consistently bring those up. Why are we reviewing ones that we haven't, or have you had complaints on those?
We reviewed all locations statewide because the guidance and the recommendations that come at the federal level have changed over the years.
Understood.
In the longer term past, there was the approach that those active flashers were the best solution and provided the most appropriate advance notice and the greatest safety to drivers.
Right.
But data and studies show that the type of flasher really should focus on the specifics of that location. And so that's what we've done. We've taken the national guidance, we've looked at best practices in other states to come up with guidance for Nevada that is appropriate to our state. And we're reviewing all of the existing locations and then tweaking them to meet this current guidance. And we recognize, as Commissioner Hartung was saying, that this is a change for drivers. Their expectations may not be, their current expectations may not be appropriate for whatever tweaks or changes we put in place. And that's exactly why we plan to do a large outreach and education program to help them understand and know what to expect and know if they need to change their driving habits as a result of any tweaks that we are going to make on the roadway.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, yes or no answer. So you're going to study this, assess whether they fit within the new standards, the federal standards that you guys are adhering to. If changes need to be made, you will make those changes. If they don't, they won't be made. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, and you'll notify, obviously, the county, and we can do some outreach prior to any changes being made.
Yes, absolutely.
All entities, for that matter.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ndo. I appreciate that, the further clarification. All right, any other discussion on this item? Seeing no further discussion, we will close that. Thank you, Mr. Mortensen. Thank you, staff. You can beat him up later. We're on to. Oh, okay, Commissioner, we'll reopen.
I'd be happy to get back to you on the studies that have happened out there. When you're talking speeds, there are very many considerations that have to be made, and I understand that the first thing that everybody wants to say is slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. But the problem is that not everybody's driving that speed. So if we turn around and we slow it down, it kind of becomes an enforcement issue. And the next project that would come through, maybe we design it for 45 miles an hour. But if everybody's driving 65 miles an hour, then that's an inappropriate design for that speed. So there's a lot of back and forth in how we determine what the appropriate speed limit is through an area. And that generally is determined by driver behavior as well as the designs that are out there. If we have increased speeds, the next permit that comes in, that increased speed will be a consideration, as well as sight distances. And it also goes to the advanced warning system. If we have a higher speed out there, we're going to have to provide them a more advanced warning system. So there's a lot of back and forth that goes within that traffic analysis and the safety studies that are involved with that. And so the one thing that I will do is make sure that if we do speed studies like that in the future, that we will keep the appropriate jurisdiction staff involved with those speed studies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. And I will say, I know that NDOT and other agencies have to work within certain engineering and certain criterias and percentiles and that sort of thing. But I will say there is some value in looking at holistically kind of at different areas and applications. And sometimes being a little flexible outside of that box is the greatest safety benefit. And I will just say there was no criteria that fit a traffic signal in front of the Bonanza. And 12 people, I think, in that stretch were either injured or killed. And I think since we fought to get that signal in, which didn't fit any of the criteria for a signal, I don't believe there's been any incidents. So the warrants. So I would just say I understand the box in which most of you have to operate within, but sometimes we have to look outside that box. And this may be one of those instances. So, thank you.
I have, being that you've opened that can of worms, when we talk about the AASHTO and the number of different individuals that participate in the planning standards for that all of our planning departments, NDOT, RTC, all adhere to, the vice chair is correct. There's no human element. I've had this discussion with my staff many times about school zones, about walking sidewalk flashers, and well, it doesn't warrant that. There's no traffic flow. There's no need. Yet we've had how many student pedestrian incidents this year alone, maybe at intersections that didn't necessarily warrant an improvement. And we look at a black and white planning that's a national standard and just accept that to be okay without giving that human element to it. And I think what the vice chair, and at least what I'm trying to say, is that they've seen it, they implemented it at Virginia and saved lives. We need to start looking at just not the black and white. If it doesn't check the boxes, we don't do it. That's not how we should be pursuing anything in this area, and that's not an innovative way. That's a kind of cold-hearted way, in my opinion. I'd like to see we look and strive for a little bit better, not only at the NDOT, but also at RTC as we look at planning. And that's not just these organizations, but Commissioner Hartog and I harp on our staff, and the school district should do the same. And so as we talk about Vision Zero, remember, we're trying to save lives, and it's not a black and white piece of book that's out on the road. It's a person that's walking down that sidewalk. So just remember that. That's the only comment I would have. Mr. Mortensen.
If I may add on to the end of that, with those federal standards, from our perspective, those are absolutely necessary.
Correct.
And in many, many instances, we strive to go above and beyond that. And a lot of the challenges that we face are, as you guys well know, funding, geometric constraints, whatever that might be. And we generally do our best to make things as safe as possible. In fact, after we do every project that we put out, we have a safety audit come back in and say, given the demographic of this area, for example, if it's in a community where there's an elderly home where vision impairment may be more of a concern, we'll maybe add lighting and those types of things. So we don't just do the bare minimum of what the federal and the standards are. Generally, we will go in and try to do the best that we can for what we can do in those areas. Is there a safe way to do more? Absolutely, but it really comes down to that balance between what we can and can't do.
Understood. Appreciate that. All right. Seeing no further comments, I hope. Nothing? Okay. We thank you, Mr. Mortensen. We appreciate you coming and sharing with us today, and staff. Thank you for participating today. We are on to item 7.1. Madam Director.
Thank you. This item we are very happy to be able to talk about today and seek your input. As you know, we did the demonstration of the double-decker bus back in December, and we have the results of that to report back to you on today, as well as a range of options, and again, seeking your input on those options.
Welcome,
and
David.
David Carr is here to provide the information for us.
All right, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is David Carr. I'm the Facilities and Fleet Manager for the RTC, and I'm here to talk about the double-decker bus demonstration. So we did it over 3 weeks in December. There were 75 trips and 158 surveys were completed. Overwhelmingly, there was the comments we received from our passengers and customers were overwhelmingly positive. They really enjoyed the bus, the novelty of it, and the features of it really made it very popular with them. We did use it on routes 5, 12, 17, and the Rapid, Lincoln Line, and the Regional Connector. So we tried it in various different applications to see how the bus operated in those applications. I've also included some information on costs, some more detail on the feedback, and then some comments from the San Francisco did a study on the Metropolitan Transit Authority, and there's some comments included on that. Some of the costs were, we got these from Keolis on their operation of the double-decker bus in Las Vegas. You can see there's a little bit more of a cost for parts per mile for a double-decker bus. The bus cost itself, this bus here is a double-decker bus it's a prototype being built for Foothill Transit. It's 100% electric, and it's in line with our fleet electrification program, but it does cost a little bit more than a conventional bus that we currently operate. It's actually quite a bit more. Again, the comments were mostly positive. They love the bus. This bus had really some upgrades in it. They had like a 4-inch cushion seat, so they were really comfy. Our seats, by contrast, are plastic with a cloth insert and a little drain hole because of the maintenance and the number of passengers we carry. The type of materials we use to get them to last longer. It requires us to use a different type of material. But they love the view, the novelty of it. Some even thought it reminded them of some of their trips to Europe or England, and so it was really positive, and most people thought it was really a neat bus. Got some feedback from the contractors. Overall, driving the bus is pretty nice. It was very easy to handle, even though it was a much bigger vehicle height-wise. There were some things they were concerned about, particularly the overhead. It's 13 feet, 6 inches tall. So while you may have scouted out a route and looked for things, there are things that, like if a branch is weighted down with snow or water, it could strike the bus, and those are the kind of things that are hard to stay in front of. It also currently doesn't fit into our fueling and bus cleaning area, so we'd have to make modifications to allow that to occur. Right now, the comments were you can't see what's going on upstairs. There is a camera and there is a monitor, but when you're operating a bus, you really can't look at the monitor to see what kind of stuff might be going on up there. There is a slight tilt to the bus because the roadways are tilted, so as you come around corners or stuff, if you're in the near lane, there are signs, branches, things that stick out that could strike the bus. So you just have to be aware of it. And then, of course, we took it to Carson City, and the high profile made it more susceptible to wind conditions. On the maintenance side, if there's a spill or something going on upstairs, it's harder to clean. At the end of the shift, the guys cleaning the buses have to go up and down the stairs. There's a lot of things involved in that. And again, they don't fit into the bay where we currently do bus washing and fueling, so we had to make accommodations for that. And then the way Villanova's constructed today, there are some areas where the bus would fit, and we've made accommodations for a double-decker bus, but there are other areas where they don't quite fit. So if there was a person that was new to the facility or a driver maybe that wasn't quite being aware, if they pull into the wrong bay or they pull into the wrong area, they could cause significant damage to the bus and to the building. Other observations, it does take longer to get in and out of the bus. It's narrow passageways, low ceiling, it's only 5'7". Some passengers just didn't want to go up there because they didn't want to bend over that far. There are 49 seats upstairs, so that's pretty nice. You can handle a lot of people, but it's only a narrow aisle, so it's only kind of like one-way traffic. It does require extra time because we wait for the passengers to be seated, so there's just a lot of extra time in the transition. And you can see the stairwell, it's pretty narrow. You have to wait for people to either come down or go up before you can do that. And again, the bus must be stopped. Just really narrow during an emergency or any other time when you want to get out pretty quickly. There is one pinch point for ADA accessibility. It's 32 7/8 inches in the aisle. We had this in the BE35s, the 35-foot Proteras. When we first got them, there were some people that operated like a scooter or a larger than a wheelchair profile device to get around, mobility device, and they couldn't make that turn. So that is a pinch point that's in this vehicle, and we'd have to be aware of that. But just beyond that pinch point, that opens up into a much roomier area, so there's actually quite a bit of room past that. Now, in our analysis, the best fit for a bus like this, because of the delays, because of the time it takes to get in and out, would be a BRT. The Virginia line, once it's extended, has enough stops to where a bus like this might actually fit pretty well. We currently do not have the number of ridership sufficient enough. We're going to be operating 40-foot buses on that route in the future, and a 100-passenger bus doesn't quite fit. And I think in the future, if that route, the passenger ridership increased significantly, we had enough activity on that route, that would be a good option to look at down the road. The other thing is we have on our agreements with our BRT routes that are with the FTA is that our buses would be 100% electric. So today there is not a 100% electric bus available, but as I mentioned in the earlier slide, Foothill Transit is purchasing a bus, 100% electric bus, and that prototype will go into service this summer. So we'll have an opportunity to learn from their experience and see how successful that bus is, and it may be something we can look at in the future. Due to the delays caused by the boarding and loading of the bus, we might need an extra bus. So we may, instead of doing it with 8 or 10 buses, we might need 9 or 11 buses, depending on how the route's configured. So that additional time, even though it's not very much time, over the course of a day with a number of stops and the larger number of passengers, it could require us to have more equipment. Some of the safety concerns were expressed. You know, they could be doing vandalism or other stuff upstairs, and we can't really see what they're doing. You have to talk to them over a PA. So if you're trying to manage some activity up there, either with youth or other types of individuals, it's more challenging to do it from downstairs and driving the bus. Obviously, the higher risk for falling. And then an emergency exit, they have emergency windows upstairs, but the drop is 10 feet, and it's just a little bit higher than you would normally jump out of a bus. We did look at San Francisco's Metropolitan Transit Authority study, and their results were similar to ours in that overall the public perception of these buses is very favorable. They love the bus, they like the bus. It's a really novel and really neat thing. People did not have any trouble climbing the stairs generally. Half of them preferred to ride on the upper level. What I observed with our passengers, we have a fair amount of disabled and elderly passengers. It's our normal ratio is about 50-50. And there was a lot of them that I spoke to personally, they just didn't want to make the climb up the stairs. They thought it was neat, they thought it'd be nice. They just didn't want to go up the stairs. It was probably just out of their wheelhouse a little bit. As you can see, the dwell time is a little bit more. You would think 11 seconds wasn't significant, but over, so many stops each time the bus goes by over the course of a day, that adds up to a significant amount of time. The benefit that they saw was that the view and the experience of riding a double-decker is really neat. The double-decker has a lot more seats. You can put 100 people in there. There's less standing room, so it's less of an issue for us. But in San Francisco, a lot of standees. The stairwell, the wheelchair clearance, and the lack of an electric version were some of the challenges the MTA faced. And there are actually a reduced number of accessible seats on the lower floor. So there were some of that concerns, and then the longer dwell time. So potential courses of action would be delaying any purchase until a 100% version becomes available, and we can conduct another test pilot and see how it works in our application. We could identify funding and purchase a small number of electric double-decker buses and plug them into our existing BRT routes. We could also identify funding and purchase a larger number and do the same thing. Or at this point, we could decide not to purchase double-decker buses. That's it for my presentation. If you have any questions.
Thank you, David. Appreciate the presentation. Madam Vice Chair, I'll let you jump right in first.
You knew. I don't know, maybe we call it the Cashel line, since he always wanted a trolley, and we're not getting anywhere near the trolley. So the question I have, and I appreciate, thank you very much for the demonstration project that you did. And while I didn't ride one of these buses, I did ride the double-decker that we had at RTC previously. And when you identified that the experience was what people found most appealing about it, there is something about the double-decker experience which draws you to the bus. And certainly when we rode it, the comments that I heard from many were how incredible it was to go under the Reno Arch in a double-decker bus. And I guess my question is, when we're talking about Virginia Street in particular, when we are trying to drive up ridership from a tourism, downtown housing, university demographic, is this a potential for just a demonstration on this one route? To me, I don't know that it fits for our fixed bus routes. Those seem to have a little bit of a different purpose, and while there will be some overlap, I kind of view Virginia Street as different in the sense of an experience. I hear from my constituents and the people at the university and visitors how much they want to be able to traverse from, the Park Lane area to the Midtown area to the downtown area to the university area when they want to experience a dinner or a show or something like that, and something that would identify that's the Virginia line, that's the Wolfpack line, whatever we're going to call it. So that's kind of where my mind was coming from. Wasn't necessarily a blow them all out at every potential route. It was more, is there an opportunity for us when Virginia Street is completed and it is the new multimodal wide sidewalk, that it's part of a campaign to increase ridership in this corridor? I just wonder if that's an opportunity that we could explore, whether it's an electric bus or otherwise. I mean, is there a contractor out there that would say, we think you're going to want these on a bigger footprint down the road? We'll let you demonstrate it for 6 months? I don't know. I don't know what's available. I appreciate all the feedback. That's just been the feedback I get, and certainly the experience I had is an experience that people may be more attracted to a double-decker bus to try it for the first time, that maybe not be our normal transit riders, and may increase the ridership simply because it's a double-decker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I read the whole report. It was a good report. I know the drivers enjoyed driving the buses. They thought they were easy to handle and turn around and everything else. The problem is, you said they're a little bit more expensive. They're double the price of one of our buses now. They're $1.5 million a piece. And they're building one for Foothill, and that'll be out in summer of next year?
This year.
This year?
It's been a 2-year project that was,
Okay.
it's been delayed as they're applying this
So
new
we
technology.
need to look at that and see how they're doing. Number two, if people have small children or groceries, they're not going out the upper deck. They can't get them up that stairway. And the 10-foot drop is a big deal if they have to get out of there in a hurry. Even a small child can't even do that. I think it's too soon to put anything in service yet. We need to have a good long study on this, but the cost has got to come down, and I don't think we can afford $1.5 million buses, and especially even not talking about a fleet of them. Okay? Good report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. David, I have my own comments, obviously. When the bus came for its demonstration and I saw it at Villanova, it's eye-catching. It does draw your eye to it. It does provide a kind of an interest. What is that? Why? How do I get to participate in it? I don't ride public transit. I don't live anywhere close that I could, but seeing that, I was like, it's kind of an interesting thing. So from my standpoint, it does add to that tourism level. And I was an advocate, and Lee and I fought tooth and nail on this on the street when the streetcar coalition was going together, and we were trying to discuss whether a streetcar should run up and down from the convention center to downtown. He said, absolutely not. We're not a streetcar town. We're a bus town. We went back and forth, but that's neither here nor there. But I have a tendency to agree with the vice chair and with the mayor. These are very expensive buses, and to have fleets of them doesn't make any sense to me. And when you talk about some of the challenges of climbing the stairs, and correct, Mr. Carr, the buses that we have now that have kind of the articulation, what do we call those buses?
They're 60-foot articulated buses.
60-foot articulated. There's no special term. Okay, I didn't know. I mean, once again, not that versed yet. But the articulated buses, from my understanding, some of those buses are aging out, and we're going to have to replace those buses very soon. Correct?
Yes.
And so that might be that's another discussion we have to Mayor Smith's part, is that we got to have those articulated buses that carry those larger capacity buses But along that Virginia corridor, when we talk about convention space, and we're very new, as the chairman of the RSCVA and being involved in that Convention Visitors Authority for the last 5 years, we are very unique in our community that we don't have just a convention center that we commute people back and forth from. We have 10 convention centers that located at every one of our properties that house different conventions at any given time that utilize our city in different capacities, whether it's in the city of Sparks, whether it's in the city of Reno, it doesn't matter, those conventions, and those individuals come, and if they can't get an Uber, if they can't, this is a really viable option. So if we can outline specific routes, Virginia, for example, that goes up and down, utilizes that, I see that as a benefit. If it's the Lincoln line where it goes up and down and goes through the hearts of our communities, I see the benefit. Outside of those thoroughfares, I don't see the benefit to this community unless it's, and as you pointed out, I saw it maybe as the city connector between Carson City. I mean, how nice is it to climb up and have a nice 30-minute drive and a double-decker berth between Reno and Carson City, which a lot of our legislators do sometimes. Those are benefits, but if we have those wind challenges. But I kind of tend to find myself with Mayor Smith is that I think we're jumping the gun with this, but I don't want to lose sight of it. I think that it is a viable option. It does have a lot of potential to it. I just think the price tag's a little high right now, and especially when we demonstrate a bus that has all the bells and whistles, and all of a sudden we produce a bus that doesn't have the bells and whistles, their right of perception may change. And so we want to be cognizant of that, I think, as we approach any discussions going forward, so.
If I may add to your
Yes.
comment about the replacement schedule, so we're looking at 2022 being when we need to replace those 8, I believe, articulated buses that are operating on Virginia Street today. So that would give us time for the electric vehicle to come online and for that to be evaluated at Foothill.
Well, the current plan is to replace those with the existing 40-foot electric buses, because we're getting 2 more new ones for the extension. So we'd have a uniform 40-foot fleet, because that's what the passenger demand looks like right now. But, you know, as that corridor is expanded, and we'll see if there's growth, if we see sufficient growth to, we could add buses in the interim, and it may come to a point where we get critical mass to where that type of a bus with that much capacity would actually fit. But in our current analysis, it only shows that we need, a 40-foot bus has sufficient capacity at 10-minute intervals to handle the volume of traffic we have on that route. So that's what we're positioned to do. But like you said, as this route, as this is completed, and if that corridor is expanded in terms of passengers, it certainly lends itself to doing that, because we would retire the other 8 Arctics, and then we would have 40-footers in play. So purchasing other buses in the future, we can always look at other buses. And I would imagine that as they develop this prototype bus and it goes into service and it's successful, that price point could possibly come down. So I think there's other factors in play that if we're looking 3-4 years out as we see this route develop, part of the equation is we don't know what transit looks like in 5 years. So if it all goes to this microtransit and it feeds the BRTs, and the BRTs become very popular and very high volume, this bus might be a really good fit. If it goes in a different direction, they may not be. So I think what we're seeing is an opportunity to explore these buses, see how they might fit. We think it could possibly be a good fit, but we have to see the numbers play out and see how the corridor evolves in the near future.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Carr, and I know there's always 2 ways to approach every issue, especially as it pertains to transit. You can either be proactive or reactive. And a lot of our routes, we want to obviously evaluate ridership and be reactive to the growing need. But I think as you start looking at the downtown corridor and the growth specifically in the city of Sparks and the city of Reno, specifically as you look at the multifamily that's being built along B Street and Victorian, you look at the number of projects that have been slated and approved in the downtown Reno, Harrah's being purchased, you're seeing a transition now. And so to be, and I'll use a case study, when you go and you look at the city of Dallas and Houston, they were building train stations well out into the suburban area, well before there was houses out there. And this is what I've said all along, transit is the catalyst. And so if you provide a transit option for the individuals, it does help the growth within the community. It's a chicken and egg. Every commissioner up here is to send it in a different form or fashion, that you have to make sure that these individuals have that transit before you'll see the ridership. So I would argue on certain spots, yes, you're absolutely right. We have to be reactive to the way ridership is. But in some other spots, we'd be proactive and be innovative and start bringing forward some new ideas, such as this, and try it, as we've done with microtransit, and we've seen that to be successful. We need to look at some of these things. I'm not saying jump on it now and let's go, let's throw everything we have at it. I'm just saying not always is the reactive way to be the answer to some of this. And I think there's enough information out there to say that there is probably enough driving factor to look at it going forward. Commissioner Harton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David, did we paint ourselves into a corner with respect to the height of the bus stops changing for the articulated versions on Virginia Street? Because I know that there was some...
The platform heights?
Yes.
There's a little bit of a challenge with that, but we found that we can operate with the 40-footers on those platforms. We just have to just pull up a little bit further.
I see. And so then the platform doesn't work any longer?
It doesn't work as well.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So now if we were to change to 40-footers and we wanted those stops to be as effective and efficient as they were before, we'd have to go back in and retrofit them.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what we'd have to do. I think they work. We've been operating with 40-footers on there, and we have a pretty good operational profile right now. So we didn't operate the double-decker on there, so I don't know. So I think we'd have to look at those factors.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all right. I will bring it back to the board. Looking for a motion and kind of next steps for this item. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. I appreciate, again, all the study on this. I know this is something that I've been interested in pursuing. And I just have to wonder if one of these manufacturers, in the hopes of getting some larger contract down the road, wouldn't allow us some 6, 12-month usage. I don't know. I don't know if that's something they don't do, would do, potentially do. But I just see, as Virginia Street completes, there's an opportunity there that could increase ridership. And it's the self-fulfilling prophecy of, if you provide it rather than waiting for it, you might find that more people will use it simply because of the style and what it represents. So anyway, thank you for all your work on this, and hopefully we can explore some of those. Well, thank you. Move to accept.
I have a motion to accept, and I'll second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Carr, we appreciate it. All right, we are on to agenda item 8.1.
That's right. This is our monthly Virginia Street update, and we have our project manager, Jeff Wilbrecht.
Welcome, Jeff.
Yeah, good morning. Excuse me, Chairman and fellow commissioners. Here to give a quick update on the Virginia Street project. We missed January, so I'll try to kind of capture everything we've done from December. So as you're well aware, we've had a really mild winter so far. It's really allowed the schedule of the project to be going very well. So if you've been to Midtown lately, there's a lot of concrete going in on the entire corridor, up from Center Street all the way up to Liberty. We're doing work now. The work in the roundabouts well underway. Today we're doing a big concrete pour to pour the eastern half of it, and then as later in the month we'll switch to the other side. We're also doing a lot of work on the transit stations. There's one at Regency that's well underway with the structural steel. The soffit and the glass paneling are going to be going in the next couple weeks. And we've been doing a lot of work in the last couple months to get the North Virginia scope of the project ready to go. So that includes the acquisition of all the properties, preparing an abatement and a demo contract, and then working with Sierra Nevada Construction to organize the construction through those areas. So that's been a lot of work the last couple months, packaging that up and getting it ready to go. Just to kind of talk about some details of the construction project. So we're about $18.3 million through the end of January into that construction contract. That is about, it's actually more than half of the Midtown scope of that project. So we're well underway in Midtown. And there was a couple change orders you just recently approved. We're still working with the contractor just to get our paperwork really straight. These are all things that are, the work's there's some signal poles and some ADA stuff up the North Virginia part of the project that we're just packaging up and making sure it's appropriate. So you'll see those come in the next month or so. And then I always like to show photos. So we've been doing a lot of work. I can't emphasize the amount of work that Sierra Nevada Construction has performed in the last couple of months due to this mild weather. It's really allowed us to become even more critical of our schedule and be forward thinking as much as we can to see where we can be accelerating certain elements of the project. So we've been working really well as a team to look at how we can accelerate paving. We're at the end of the month, we're going to get going with paving between Center Street and Mount Rose Street. So that's kind of the middle section of the project. With the acceleration of concrete work north of Center Street, we're looking at how we can be accelerating those elements as well, just to get this midtown part of the project complete. So as we finalize those ideas and those schedules, I'll be bringing them to you guys, but please know that we are looking at everything we can do to accelerate this project. So this is roundabout construction on the east side. It's going well. And then we've been doing lots of outreach. So as we moved north of Center Street, we did do a couple of, we kind of called them coffee with the construction team, where we took over a coffee shop for a couple hours and just invited stakeholders and businesses and residents in to come enjoy a cup of coffee and then ask us any kind of questions that they may had. So the first one was at Truckee Bagel. The next one was at Joe Stella. And that was within those limits that we were doing that concrete work. They were really good events. We had lots of good questions and a lot of good participation. So we look forward to future opportunities to do similar events. And we've really been continuing what's been working for us in terms of outreach. So our stakeholder updates, doing the Midtown Minute for traffic control. And along with the North Virginia UNR scope of work, we have a lot of planned. We've had a lot of meetings, and we have a couple meetings planned to really get into the UNR leadership and talk to them about the project, inform them about what's going on. We understand the outreach in UNR is going to be different than Midtown, so we're preactively planning for that to occur. So that's underway. And then we had a couple kind of fun events take place. So presidential candidate Tom Steyer came into Midtown, and we just kind of helped clean up the corridor to make his walkthrough successful. And then Sam Sprague from Meccano had a nice post on his social media of the completed concrete work in front of his business that we'd like to share. So those are just some of the fun kind of things that we have been experiencing as we've been completing this concrete work. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Any comments? Good job. Jump
Great.
back out there. Get back to work. Handsome Dan, you too.
Thank you.
All right. I know. It's my favorite. Dan, you get so many compliments amongst the ladies in Midtown. I get it all the time. Where's Handsome Dan coming by? All right, we're going to move on to 8.2. This is Lemon Drive update. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Move to, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Welcome. Sorry.
Thank you. This is an update on our Lemon Drive project, and we have our project manager, Dale Keller, to provide information.
Welcome, Dale.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members of the commission. Dale Keller, project manager for the Lemon Drive project. Since last fall, we've been hard at work. Our team has been working hard and staying on schedule to deliver these much needed improvements. As a reminder, this project is divided into two separate segments with two different schedules. So the first segment is segment 1, which is widening Lemon Drive from 4 lanes to 6 lanes from US 395 or out to Military Road. Now, the goal of this project is not to get traffic quicker or faster to 395, is actually to improve both the safety and the access management and the current issues we're seeing out there along Lemon today. Our team is reviewing the crash data to identify existing hotspots and trends to provide specific and special design considerations. In addition, we're verifying what the traffic model is showing us for existing and future traffic demands along the stretch. And lastly, we have a concept laid out for preliminary engineering, and we plan to share this information out to the public later this spring and early May. For segment 2, this segment is the segment along Swan Lake. It's from Fleetwood Drive all the way around the lake to Chickadee Drive, where we're going to widen Lemon Drive from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. And this is where we have a lot of involvement from the other participating agencies such as Washoe County and the City of Reno, and try to find the best solution to have a regional solution to provide safety mobility round the year for any type of flood event moving forward. So we had a technical advisory kickoff meeting that occurred earlier this month where we talked about our project goals, our needs, and some of the challenges out there. A very open discussion. It was very well attended, and I want to thank the participation from both the staff from City of Reno and Washoe County. Next week, we are going to meet again to really throw spaghetti on the fridge and see what sticks, and look at different alternatives, different alignments, horizontal, vertical, and see what quantitative evaluation of alternatives will flush out to narrow that down to 3, then eventually get to a preferred alternative. And of course, we're working closely with the Swan Lake Active Recovery and the stakeholders there. So schedule-wise, this is the same schedule I showed last fall. We remain on schedule to deliver this first segment 1 through final design through this year and be ready for a construction project in early 2021. For segment 2, we continue to progress. Right now, we're tasked to get to this preferred alternative for segment 2 and present to the board a recommendation of the preferred alternative, with also that last row is a project delivery report to determine what the best way to deliver this project as a traditional design bid build, design build, or a CMAR contract. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Keller. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Dale, I've made no secret of this, and I said this when the first sort of preliminary design started coming out and talking about the extent of the project. I don't believe that taking it to Chickadee is wise. I believe we should take it all the way to Ramsey. This will give great opportunities, one for the whole entire backside of the valley, but it really will allow the opening of the airport on that far end. There's a lot of developmental opportunities out there for industrial and commercial sites that could be a great benefit to not just that valley, but of course the entire region. And if we get the road put through from Chickadee to Spanish Springs, again, imagine that cross-traffic opportunity. People working in Spanish Springs that could potentially work in that industrial park at the Stead Airport. So I don't know how, Madam Director, we keep this on the front burner. Lee told me that it was not a big deal all along. I've got numerous occasions when he mentioned that we could extend it. So I want to keep that on the table.
If I might add to
Please.
that, I know the first step to doing that would be to include that extension in the regional transportation plan. So that's absolutely something that's on our identified needs to look at as part of that planning process. And that will be finishing up by the end of this year when the study will still be underway.
My biggest fear, though, Dale, is this, and I'm not trying to thump on the RTC, but I've watched us do this time and time and time again, and I can list a half a dozen projects where we haven't gone far enough when we were there with equipment, with manpower, woman power, everything needed to complete the job, and we didn't. We fell short, and we have to go back time and time again and fix those mistakes. And so I would implore staff, let's look at that now. Let's make sure that we're dealing with it now. I don't want it to be the third lane that should have gone from McCarran on Pyramid up to Disc Drive. And I can show you that the roadway fails because we didn't do that, and it could have been that first piece of the extension of Pyramid Highway. Let's not make that mistake again. Let's do it. The chairman mentioned moving transit into outlying areas and how the growth occurred, and good healthy growth. This is not going to encourage residential. This is going to encourage industrial and commercial, which are jobs that will occur on that evolving piece of the airport. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we do this now. We think about it now. Thank you.
right, any further discussions on this report? Looking for a motion to accept the report. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. All motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Keller. Appreciate it. All right, we're on to item 9.1, legal issues. Mr. Ferguson, do we have anything we need to discuss with you today?
At the January meeting, I had mentioned having an attorney-client session at this, before or after this meeting, and due to some scheduling issues in the cases I was going to report to you on, it made more sense to postpone that.
Okay.
Next month is a workshop, and it is hard to have those meetings around a workshop, so I'd like to do it in April.
Okay.
But I wanted to know if you guys prefer to have an attorney-client session before or after the actual board meeting. I know on a previous occasion, Vice Chair Jordan had requested one after, and that seemed to work pretty good, but,
I think that's when I had kid duty.
Okay.
Kid off, so I'm fine before.
does anyone else have a strong preference one way or the other?
I would prefer after for me.
After?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Ferguson. We're on to our final public comment of the day. I do not currently have any comment cards signed in. Is there anybody liking to speak under, wish to speak under comment? I do. Come on down. Michael.
Michael, you need some help with description. I'm sorry. Well, this is Dora O.L.
Michael's the one that's not doing such a good job.
Yeah, and I was gonna have my dog do it, but I didn't want to step on people. So this is Dora Martinez for the record. I tried to fill out a public comment online, but since it's the 30th year of ADA, I would challenge you guys to make it accessible so I could do it online or print it and bring it here. So I'm not scatterbrained today. I'm sick, so, okay, sit. Okay. So regarding the 5.2, thank you for Donches. Sorry if I'm butchering your name, blame it on Siri. That's how he pronounced it. For the ADA, I would really encourage to have the signage for the bus route on the city Reno 4th Street Station and Centennial Plaza, to have the sign what route it is in a 60 inches off the ground, because when it's way up there, it's hard to use seeing AI app to look at it. And my husband, he's visually impaired, legally blind, so it would need to be in a bigger font just to accommodate. That way we don't miss our bus and our connection. Also, sometimes Route 21, we go to the gym on Fitness for 10 and it's on the Lincoln. Sometimes it doesn't announce the stops. So we have to depend on a bus driver. I understand somebody said it's their job, but their job is mainly for driving safely. And when we depend on a driver, they forget, they're humans. Some of them are nice. They let us off in a courtesy stop. Some of them goes, oh, you gotta have to go around, which is fine if I didn't have anything else to do, but I do. Also, what else? Like I said, it is the 30th year for ADA, and I was wondering, since we're doing St. Patty's Day free rides for everyone, I was wondering if we could have free rides for people with disability that day, the 26th of July. Just putting it out there, Miss Amy Cummings, if that's okay with everyone, that would be great. Also, do you have anything while I think? Babe? Okay. Service dogs. If you all could tell, he's a service dog. He came from a school, or I went and got him. I have nothing against people with their emotional support animals, even though they're not covered under the ADA. But when they come on board, whether it's RTC Ride or RTC Access, It needs to be on a leash. I looked at Chapter 55 for the Washoe County, all dogs, pets, whatever. On public, it has to be on a leash. Sometimes we get on bus and they say, oh, what does the dog, what is the service to you? And they go, oh, it's my service dog. Okay, they get on the bus, they're not on a leash. Chihuahua, whatever it is, I don't know because it's tiny. And it can distract my dog or it can bite my dog and I don't know where that dog has been, injured or not. It's not all right. My dog is my eyes. Something happened to him, I'm stuck. So it's like it's my child. So that's just to, to make sure somebody can look into that. I also drove in Access. I brought this up last month. There was a gentleman there and their dog was not on a leash. It was a well-behaved dog, but it was in the middle of the aisle. And it was scary because it's a big poodle. And also, since, I don't know, sorry, I have one more one.
Go ahead.
I didn't see the time. No, just kidding. So I was wondering if I understood the 5.2, Mr. Donches was talking about some people doing the ADA report and stuff. And I was wondering if we could have a place on that table with, something about us with us on the table, because it is important to have our perspective, and it is our lives. And I think it's important that we be on the table with Rebecca, and I forgot the person's name. So, and one more thing with David Carr's PowerPoint. Next month, I want to be in and be included, and I was wondering if we could make them accessible so I can follow along. I don't know how we're going to do that. Oh, and was I far away from the mic? Where is it? Oh, okay.
You're good.
So I want to follow along. So David Carr was showing the PowerPoint with double-decker bus. So something about 32 inches where a scooter can't go through. I think it's 36 for ADA, and a lot of people are going to be riding that. And I'm not sure I couldn't see the stairs going upstairs. So if there's a gap, like between the steps, a can get stuck, or a dog's leg can get stuck and it can break. So just be mindful of those things, and especially the aisle with the scooters. A lot of people are going to be riding the bus since the ADA, the access are limiting their rides. That's it for now. Thank you.
Great, Dora. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Michael, will you help?
How can I help you? Let me know.
Maybe
One more
not.
thing, I
Maybe
forgot-
don't help Dora. Michael, will you make sure we get their comment cards filled out for them as well?
One more thing. There was a gentleman who gave us tickets last month, and I'm really good with voices, but I don't know their name. It was a 19 pieces of day ride, and I just want to say thank you. And it's one of the commissioners, one of you guys. So thank you. Who's you? What's your name?
Mayor Smith.
Oh, thank you so much. Bless you.
All right. Thank you, Dora. We appreciate you coming down. All right, seeing no further public comment, we're on to item 11, which is our member items. Are there any items by any of the members that they'd like to add? Just really quickly off of Dora's comments, I have to agree with the ADA issues, being that it is severe issues. Service dogs, I have a good friend of mine who is a city councilman in Jacksonville, who works for K9 for Warriors, and he's the executive director for that, which just helps veterans with PTSD. It's difficult for individuals, service dogs, and those individuals working with service dogs to be on a public transit and working with public transit when we don't have that barrier between individuals. That if you don't have a service dog, they should probably be in a cage. As owning veterinary hospitals and animal hospitals, I know it's very easy to put animals in those. So I think we probably have a little bit more discussion on that as we move forward. So I'd like to see some of that happen. All right. Seeing no other further items, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Oh, 1 second before I adjourn. Madam Executive Director.
Thank you. I wanted to introduce Michelle Krause, who has been supporting Denise and learning how to operate all of our equipment over there so that should she need to, she would be able to fill in for Denise.
Welcome, Michelle. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for participating today. Perfect. We have a duo over there, a duo team. I like it. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. We are adjourned.